The
So,
Mexican.
are we live? Yes, we are. Sorry, Mike. Yeah, sorry for the delay, or the delay of the early start. If that makes any sense, because we are starting really early today, but with some good reason. There's actually some things happening in the hockey world today that are fascinating. It feels as we're going to get right into it. So I think we should just start the show and then go from there.
Okay,
So
well,
we'll wait for Russ to get on, and we'll give Russ a minute here. I'll invite Russ again real fast, and we'll do that.
yeah, and I'll just say,
Okay.
after Saturday, I like to start off with something in another sport. Leaf fans can sympathize with the long plight of the Chicago Cubs fan, and maybe to a lesser extent the Cleveland Indians fan, because the Cubs have not won a World Series since 1908 and have not been in a World Series since 1945.
Yeah.
So sitting in a sports bar in Toronto watching that, there wasn't a great reaction because I think everybody was concentrating on on the Leaf game in Chicago, but that feeling. There's Russ. Hey, Russ.
Hey, how are you?
We're live.
Okay.
I was just saying that Maple Leaf fans can really sympathize with the plight of the Chicago Cubs fan, because the Leafs haven't been to the Cup since '67, and the Blackhawks had not been to the Cup since '61 before they won their Cup in 2010, and the Cubs have not been to the World Series since 1945. Just think of that. The VE Day, VJ Day, the atom bomb was dropped 2 months before the Cubs made the World Series.
Put that in perspective. That's 22 years longer than the Maple Leafs from winning the Stanley Cup. That's like that's
Right.
a really long time. That's an entire child who's been born, grown to be able to drink, drive cars, and go to college. Between how much longer that is than Toronto.
Yeah, it's people's lives. I mean, we saw that one older woman that was thrilled, but I didn't have the heart to tell her, you haven't won the World Series yet. You just made it. And because one of these teams is going to lose. That's my whole thing.
Oh, yeah, no one's going to lose.
Everybody wants both to win, but one's going to lose.
I mean, you guys are more baseball people than I am. So do you have picks on this? What do you think are going to win?
I'm going to go with the Indians. I think what's going to happen is similar to what happened with the Royals and Mets last year. I think they're going to run a lot. They're going to steal on the pitchers. They're going to do the little things. I think Francona's the better manager. He's actually never lost a World Series game. He will lose some games in this. I think it's going to go to 7, and I think Corey Kluber will be the difference because he'll go 2 or 3 times.
I favor the Cubs. I mean, I really have no horse in this race, but I'd like to see the Cubs break the 108-year streak. I think they're the better offensive team, and their pitching staff is a lot healthier than Cleveland's. I know Cleveland might be getting back one of their starters, but the Trevor Bauer, the hemorrhaging drone runner, I don't think he's going to be back for this series. So they're actually fairly even, and the Indians had a good season, but the Cubs have more offense. And
they should be able to 3D print Trevor Bauer a new finger. I don't understand why they can't do that.
I'm going to go with the Cubs, guys, just because of the simple fact that I was impressed. I don't know anything about baseball, but I mean, I know.
They were a team that was primed to make it all year.
Yeah.
The Indians are more of the surprise team, to be honest.
What I was impressed by was the way they won the National League championship, the way they won the National League Division Series, or National League Series, or the National League pennant.
The NLCS, yes.
Call it the pennant. The way they won the National League pennant. That's how much I know baseball, guys. But no, because they win, they fall down in the series, then they come back, and then they win it, and then all the pressure on them to win this game and get to the World Series, and they don't just win it, they absolutely
there was no doubt
rock it. And they faced 27 batters, right, or something like that. It was like
they beat Clayton Kershaw. There's no better pitcher in
I mean, when you win like that shows that curses be damned. That shows that this team has just had enough's enough type thing. And I mean,
it's weird. The thing is, and I think we mentioned this before. You've got the manager who broke the Red Sox 86-year World Series streak in Terry Francona.
Right.
The general manager who broke the streak in Theo Epstein. You've got 2 Yankees relievers. One, Andrew Miller, was traded to Cleveland. One was traded. Aroldis Chapman was traded to the Cubs. So there's just a lot of similarities between these two teams. And again, 1948 and 1908 for their droughts. So one team's going to be very happy. One team's going to be crushed. But it should be interesting. So
it's
It'll
gonna
be
be
interesting.
I mean, it's definitely going to be a very watched World Series, which is, even among casual people, because it's just, and I'll watch it. I mean, it's not something, I don't watch every World Series. The last World Series I really watched, the Phillies in 2010. And then before that, I did watch the Red Sox won the first one too, for the same kind of reasons I'll watch this one, which is because it's an interesting thing.
I just hope that there's none of this. I mean, there's already been talk about Charlie Sheen throwing out one of the first pitches in Cleveland.
No, he's not. They're not letting him.
And that's been shot down. This fantasy talk about Steve Bartman throwing
Now,
out.
if they're smart, they will just throw all that away and
Honestly,
just be like, okay.
If you want to get a man killed, have Steve Bartman get anywhere near
Right.
the next 2 weeks. Next year, if he wants to come in and throw out the first pitch after they've won the World Series, fine. But the Cubs fans are looking for somebody to blame, and if they lose and Steve Bartman is even 5 miles away from Wrigley Field.
Look, this is Fox. They'll probably have that girl from the show throw out the first pitch.
I want. Where's that blonde chick from who was the pitcher for the Bad News Bears? Come on, find her. She's got to be around somewhere. Who was that?
Tatum O'Neal. She's around.
Tatum O'Neal's around, right? She's got to be very old, but bring her out there and.
The ex-Mrs. John McEnroe. Yes.
So here's the thing, and I mean, the one disappointing thing about this, and I'll tie this into hockey before we start the show, is that they're not facing a team from Toronto, which would have been so much more appropriate to all the ideas of two cities that just think they are forever cursed in sports. Not, and it would have just been incredible to see that if the Blue Jays had lost to the Cubs, that would have just been incredible. It's not
like Chicago's cursed. It's only the Cubs. Everybody else has won.
But the Maple Leafs fans, the Toronto fans are Blue Jays fans, and they think that they think that if we're the team that actually lost to the Cubs in the World Series, you can just see it now. Come on, it's the one that'll be.
Remember, before the White Sox won their World Series, they hadn't won a World Series since 1917 and hadn't been in one since 19. Right.
Look, I'll go so far as to say if the Indians, let's say the Indians win, Toronto does become the most cursed city then. I mean, because the Indians have already, Cleveland already had LeBron James and the Cavs win last year. The Lake Erie Monsters
won the World Series in recent memory. So
no, they haven't won the World Series, but it's not the end all be all. Where Toronto hasn't won anything. Now you're going to go back to what was the last year for the Blue Jays?
93.
93. That's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah, that was a fun time too.
That's a pretty good drought for them.
I remember where I was when that happened. 93. I watched that one for sure.
It's a pretty good drought though. 67 and 93. It'll be hard to find an equivalent.
When Joe Carter hit that home run to win that World Series, where were you?
I was at my house. I was laughing because I couldn't understand. And I had, again, in 93, I worked in the hotel right by the stadium there. So the Phillies lived there. So I had to watch. I knew these guys, some of them personally. I knew Jim Fregosi personally. But I laughed because Fregosi was just so loyal and leaving Mitch Williams in bringing Mitch Williams in instead of leaving Roger Mason, to me, was a huge error. I was screaming at the TV, laughing, and so I wasn't surprised when that happened with Joe Carter, to be honest.
Yeah,
I was watching it on TV and screaming at Mitch Williams because I hate the Blue Jays. Sorry, guys.
You hate the Blue Jays?
I hate the Blue Jays. I'm a Yankees fan. I've never liked them.
I know. Well, I was a Phillies fan, and I was with a girl, and we were camping in Yellowstone National Park. And we were in order to watch this game, which I wanted to watch. I had been good at not watching the World Series because we had been camping for about a week or so, and I'm like, I gotta watch this final game. So we found a bar, and I was in Jackson, Wyoming.
God!
And watching, with like 4 other I think ranchers maybe, and a couple
with ranchers,
a couple shepherds, and there we were, and that was us. That was it. So anyway, let's begin the show, shall we? It is, what day is it? Gosh, it's been such a morning. All right.
4th of October.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, October. Bang. Hold on.
That's okay. Don't worry.
Got it.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, October 24th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
How did you miss that cue? I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Mike got something in his ear. And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the Hockeybuzzcast on hockeybuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time, or actually not at this time, usually at 1 o'clock. But we're doing it early today, and we like to do our shows usually at 1, because we'll be back probably most of the time at 1 o'clock. But today, if you're tuning in just at 1, the show's already here, so you get to watch it now, so it's all the same. Because most of you don't watch it live anyway. Most of you watch it later. So it doesn't really matter. But if you want to watch it live, it's usually on at 1 o'clock. We try to Eastern time, that would be. So that's 10 o'clock on the West Coast. And
sometimes real life gets in the way.
Yes, and it does, and that's fine. And we are supported by listeners like you who go to patreon.com/hockey and pledge for us. And just $5 a buck, $1, $20, one person just bid $25,000. You don't have to do that, but no, we have no $25,000 bid. Sorry. No. But go to patreon.com/hockey. Some special things coming later in the week about you if you do that. So anyway, today is the day we're going to talk about a person named Hampus. Okay. And it's not often that we get to chat about a guy named Hampus, but that's what the name of the show will be called. Hampus.
Russ, not Krampus.
I got it.
not
I knew we wouldn't do a
Oscars,
show about you. I knew that.
right? Not Oscars or anything like that. This is just, and always want to call him Oscars Limholm for some reason, which is ridiculous. I don't know why I do that, but this is maybe it's that other defenseman who was named Oscars Bartulis, right?
Yeah.
Who follows me on Twitter. Hello, Oscars. But anyway, Hampus Limholm, and how this saga has unfolded, because we're going to take you back a little bit to play this out as what's going on. So last year, even all summer long, and at the draft especially, we were talking about how we had to get Hampus Limholm in. The Ducks needed him. He's a great young defenseman, probably maybe their best young defenseman. He is, that's arguable, I guess, but he's among this group of good defensemen they have. And they already have a guy named Cam Fowler who's making relatively reasonable money and is marketable. So the concept was that they would trade Cam Fowler and Hampus Limholm would then sign, because the Ducks aren't a team that can spend to the salary cap. They've been historically not that, I talked to Brian. I remember having lunch with Brian Burke when he was the general manager of that team. And he just said, people just don't understand what we're doing here often. But some do. There was a mandate, they had to be X amount of dollars under the cap. That's how they worked. And because of that, they've been, a relatively secure franchise and have won the Stanley Cup and have been very competitive, proving that you don't have to spend to the cap to do it, as long as you're smart, right? So the idea was move Cam Fowler, sign Hampus Lindholm, and ride off into the sunset. Well, so teams have been around. The teams have been. When I was in Philly, we had so many teams last week when the Ducks were in town. There were so many teams there trying to scout Cam Fowler and see what was going on. And there were a lot of people who came in, and there was a whole big contingency of Leaf people. We know this because Russ and I sat there and talked to a friend of ours in between periods who told us about the this Leafs guy. These Leafs people on the elevator, and how they had the free beer, I guess, on the night when they were hanging the numbers in the rafters. Mike, was that true ever in?
Yeah, it's funny because and every patron at the Air Canada Center was handed a free beer as you walked in.
Yeah, so they were drinking all this free beer, and we heard about that, and Russ and I were talking to.
By the way, I gave mine to a Leaf fan. I gave it.
There you go. Yeah, it's one for the cause. So we were talking to her, and she was giving us, and she was saying how they were there, and there were other people there too, and it was all assumed. And at one point, the way the building works there is you walk. When I was visiting a friend of mine who was in the suite, so in order to walk to visit that friend between periods, I walked past the little booth where the GM and all that sits for the opposing team, and they were frantically on the phone talking away, and I never would listen there. That's not ethical, so I just walked on by. But there was obviously a sense of, this team needs to do something. This team there's not an ease until they figure this situation out. This is like an unclaimed check that they need to pay. And that everybody assumed was going to be moving Cam Fowler. Well, then enter Cam Fowler, who has come all this season, to his credit, really playing well. Like, just whether or not he's showcasing himself because he wants to go someplace else at this point, because he's been shot for such a long time that he's just ticked about it, or whether he wants to stay in Anaheim and prove that they should keep him, it's working. Because what we're hearing now is the talk of Lindholm possibly being moved. Now, this can be one of two things. I've seen this before many times. This can be, truthfully, that they are thinking about moving Lindholm, that negotiations have gone to the point where they just can't do it anymore. They're frustrated. Or this can be a situation where they are close on negotiations and floating the Lindholm trade rumor. If Lindholm truly does love living in Manhattan Beach or wherever he's living down there in Southern California, he may say, listen, I don't want to get traded to Ottawa. I don't want to get traded to Toronto. I don't want to get traded anywhere. So he goes in and he signs the deal, right? So what this tells me, when a trade rumor comes out after a player has been negotiating for a long time, something's about to give. And it's usually, I would say 80% of the time, that the player does sign with that team. That Lindholm comes back and signs, maybe 85 or 90%, that he'll sign now. And this will be like the little push that was needed to do that. But then I talked to some folks in Toronto this morning, and that's why the show was a little late, starting at 11:15 instead of 11. I was talking to people throughout, and they were saying that the Leafs now have actually turned their focus to Lindholm, and that they believe that Fowler's not going to be dealt. And whether or not, and that's just one opinion of two people that share the opinion. But so now if Lindholm's being dealt, this would explain also the fact that Ducks have been scouting the Leafs intensely, because the Leafs, that they're going to have to get back a significant player for Lindholm. Lindholm is not, I mean, Fowler is good, but Lindholm actually fits the Leafs perfectly because he's a young defenseman who could come, and not that Fowler's old,
They,
but
they,
that
they both fit the Leafs.
they both fit the Leafs. But
If you look at the Leafs in the first 5 games of the season, if it's a quality defenseman, whether it be a left-hand shot or a right-hand shot,
yeah, that doesn't much matter.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, and I mean with them, I think the younger the better because
Yeah.
they're 2 or 3 years away from being legitimate playoff contenders or real significant contenders. So the younger.
Yeah, the younger the better. And I think that Lindholm with him, I mean, maybe the only difference is the fact that we have a perspective of how good Fowler can be, which is pretty good. And we think Lindholm could be better than that, but we don't know. Lindholm could fall short of Fowler, but Fowler's more, baked, I guess, or not, nothing. I don't know what he does.
I think Lindholm's destined to be better. I do.
Yeah, people would think Lindholm. I think that's the general feeling that, and I agree. But I think that we don't know that for sure yet. Fowler's been a slow progress, has been all about slow progress and been about being overlooked a lot in his career, right? I mean, let's face it, Fowler at the draft held on for a long time. And the Team USA has shafted him a couple of times. And I think, but to his credit, I'm telling you, I'm impressed by his, character because he just continues to play better and better and better hockey. So then we enter, then that would be a simple enough, and that would be enough stories to write about today if that were the only thing going on. But then, of course, with Lindholm's available, this opens up a lot of different options. And suddenly, Trouba for Lindholm comes into my focus, where I've talked to a couple people in Winnipeg, and of course they threw the great thing yesterday in Winnipeg. Now that wouldn't be a direct Trouba, it wouldn't be a direct player for player trade, but those would be the major players involved.
Okay.
Because people feel Lindholm has more value, but watching yesterday's Heritage Classic, which I thought looked phenomenal, and I thought the people out there, it was a shame the Jets just didn't get a bounce or two. They played well.
It was more than that. I think it was more than a bounce or two. I think by the third period, the Jets just had lost some energy. I mean, there was a bad turn to the bad. Honestly, the bad turnover by Bufflin really sort of opened things up, and it snowballed after that, for lack of a better term.
What a shot. What
a good term to use in this case.
Bufflin with a bad turnover. Oh my God.
Yeah, right. Shocking there. But that game,
we'll read the article on Sportsology. Just saying.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We'll get to that game in a second. But I think that now the rumors of and we've seen this before too. 2 teams with trouble signing players swap those players and try again. Basically, Lindholm is a left-handed shooting defenseman, and he is exactly what Winnipeg's looking for with Trouba. I mean, we talked about Trouba having high expectations and wanting a defenseman back, a young defenseman who's left-handed. I mean, this is the perfect player for Winnipeg as far as
there's only one problem with that, and I agree. I mean, if it's what Cheveldayoff is looking for in terms of return for Trouba, and potentially with I mean, you have more offensive-minded guys with Fowler and Vatanen in Anaheim, Trouba, who is, I think, a better. I think he's a two-way defenseman. He's got some offensive ability, but he's good in his own zone and he likes to hit. That would be a fit with Anaheim. The problem is that Trouba wants more money than Lindholm.
Right.
Trouba wants. I mean, the offer that he's making Winnipeg is to force him out of Winnipeg. The $6-7 million offer, but he's at least asking for more than Ristolainen is getting.
Yeah,
and he's not going to get it from Anaheim. They're not going to give it to Lindholm, who was picked 6th overall in 2012 and has been really good for 3 years. So if they're not going to give it to Lindholm, they're sure as hell not going to give it to Trouba.
The thing is, if that somehow deal gets made and it's brokered for other teams, and Lindholm becomes a Duck. Not Lindholm. Trouba becomes a Duck. The problem is they'll lose Fowler in 2 years.
Right.
And they're really going to be – that's when they'll be in a little trouble. They'll still have Montour, and Montour should be a good NHL player. They still have Theodore, but that's when all of a sudden they might lose too much.
Well, if that happens, then if that swap does happen, we learned a couple things about this, right? Because if for some reason the Lindholm for Trouba plus draft pick or whatever happens – then we know that these negotiations have just gone really bad.
I don't think either of them are going swimmingly.
But there's a level at which a team is willing to just figure, because if they really want to get another, Anaheim is really more looking for forwards, I've been told. So Trouba is not necessarily what they need, because like you said, the reason they can think about trading Fowler is they have plenty of defensemen as it is.
Well, let's go back to the Toronto scenario.
Yep.
We know that I'm sure there are other teams that have irons in the fire when it comes to Lindholm or Fowler, and I'm sure.
Yeah, no, there are plenty of other teams for sure.
But if it's Toronto, I mean, all summer we heard if it's Fowler, then it's JVR, it's Van Riemsdyk, because the salaries are comparable. Van Riemsdyk's a few years older, but the contract length is the same, 2 more years. He's making $4.25. Fowler's making $4, and the Leafs clearly have a bevy of young forwards in the organization, down with the Marlies in junior and in the NHL. So right now, I'm not sure they're anxious to trade James Van Riemsdyk, but it's a possibility. If you're talking Lindholm, the thing is, I don't know how anxious Anaheim is to take salary back. So,
not at all.
So the thing is, that means that a 1-for-1 where it's Van Riemsdyk, it's a saw-off in terms of money. Then you're talking prospects. Then the Leafs are not trading William Nylander. They're not trading Mitch Marner. They're not trading Austin Matthews. So you're talking, you could be talking a guy like Kasperi Kapanen, who was AHL Player of the Week. You've got a talented young kid like Jeremy Bracco, who's lighting it up in the Ontario Hockey League right now. I mean, there are some young prospects, but we're talking about Lindholm, who again was a top 6 pick, a 6'3", 205-pound defenseman who's at 22 has played 3 years in the league. You're not going to get that guy unless the Leafs are willing to give up their first-round pick in 2017, and that's a risky proposition because this team is probably going to finish in the bottom 6 or 7 in the league. So
I don't think the Leafs will trade a pick like that.
They won't trade that. They would sooner trade one of those other guys that you don't want them to. I mean, they're not obviously. Let's just we don't even have to talk about Matthews, right? That's not even on this.
Yeah.
I mean that's the one player that everyone. I mean, beyond that though, I think everybody comes into focus to a degree here, depending on how aggressive they want to get, and what else they think they need. That's really what it comes down to. There's no question that they have plenty of scoring, and they will have plenty of scoring. At least have plenty of scoring for years to come. Even
the one thing the Ducks and the Jets have in common is they both are hurting without these guys.
Yeah, right, and it's affecting them, and you can't go that long in the NHL in the Western Conference or either conference and expect to be okay with that. That's a problem. Now the Ducks did put Simon Dupre on LTR, and and that helps. That's like 3.7 million or somewhere in there.
And the pressure's off a little bit because they have won a couple games. But the one thing I would give credibility to when it comes to an Anaheim-Toronto trade, first of all, since Brian Burke was hired in Toronto, they've made 16 trades.
Yeah, I know. They talk a lot. And
a lot of them have been like a prospect or a minor leaguer for minor leaguer or a draft pick for draft pick. But still, it's 16 trades in 8 seasons. Second thing is, they seem to fit in terms of the need area. Toronto's defense. I mean, they played Matt Hunwick over 20 minutes on Saturday, and played him, and he's to me a 7th defenseman at best. They played him in the last minute of regulation, up a goal. And if you look at the picture on my blog on Hockey Buzz right now, you can see how effective the defensive structure of the Leafs was. when Richard Panik scored the game tying goal. They were standing in front of the 2 Blackhawk defensemen. So
that was a great one. I'm gonna bring that up.
Yeah, so I mean,
but you can't stop Richard Panik. We talked about that last show.
Yeah. You can't stop Richard Panik. You can only hope to contain him. But the thing is that I think Lou Lamoriello and I think Mike Babcock realize they cannot go into this, continue to have the season go the way it is right now. They've led.
There's the picture Mike is speaking of here.
There you go. They've led
that's a good defensive posture right there. They've
led in all 5 games going into the 3rd period and have won 1 of them. And at a certain point, if you continue to do that, it's going to be like Edmonton. It's going to be where these players get worn down from losing so much. So I think
that's the big fear.
And their goalie's taking a beating as a result. Like Anderson, is taking a lot of the heat for the bad defense.
Now,
this part of my issue signing Anderson in the first place. And I know I'm not going to rip on Anderson here. I know, listen, it's not his fault at all. But what I'm ripping on is the choice to go with a goalie long term right now. And that's the thing. Good. So sign a goalie to a 5-year deal right now, I thought was weird because of this goalie is going to be there for a couple really rough years. And, goalies are all about confidence. And if can you beat up Anderson to the point where, he's just, maybe 2 years from now, there would have been somebody else that you could have signed for a long-term deal when the team is actually coming through it. But there wasn't a whole lot of options for them. So I'm not really going to rip them for it. But I think that it was.
The one thing I give credibility to here when it comes to Toronto and Anaheim and a possible deal, you've got Randy Carlyle as the head coach of the Ducks. And I think the Ducks are a now team, and there are a lot of players that Randy Carlyle had on his team in Toronto that are still there, like Van Riemsdyk, like Leo Komarov, maybe to a lesser extent like Nazem Kadri and Jake Gardner, who reportedly he didn't get along with. But there are some players there that he's well aware of and that there would be a comfort level with, and that's the case. Then maybe it could be a bigger deal. But I think that there are possibilities here. But I don't know whether it's Fowler or Lindholm. I would really be shocked if Bob Murray traded Hampus Lindholm. I think he is a very good young defenseman, and unless his contract demand is so ridiculous, and the report from the weekend said the difference was $300,000 to $400,000. If it's that much, just compromise and get the damn deal done.
If it is that much, then this deal will get done, and this rumor floating stuff, or even telling Toronto that to look at him carefully. Like it's not just a rumor floating thing. And I should explain this a little bit. Like, so how this plays out is the rumor comes as a result of the Leafs, being told that to look at Lindholm. So the Leafs are okay now. So what they do is they tell the Leafs to look at Lindholm. Then the rumor comes out that Lindholm is available, and whether or not if you want to get a rumor out, you tell the Leafs to look at Lindholm. Put it that way. Like if you want to, so there's some. If I was to do a little bit, of dissecting this, I would say okay, they're close on Lindholm. They want him to go the extra 400, 500, whatever it is, 1,000. So put it out there to the Maple Leafs to look at him because they're already scouting Cam Fowler, right? So they're already looking at Fowler. So now Lindholm hears he could go to Toronto, which is a totally different situation, obviously, than Anaheim, and. I think there could be some logic to the fact that this is really just a scare tactic. Yeah. And I can see that very well being true.
And I don't think Toronto is interested in, some of the lower defensemen on the Ducks roster. I don't think that they would be interested in Kevin Bieksa or Clayton Stoner. I think, that if they're going for a defenseman, if they're seriously talking trade with the Ducks, and I don't think the Ducks are going to trade Montour or Theodore or Manson or their young defensemen. It's either Fowler or Lindholm. If it's not one, it's the other.
I mean, Murray deserves a little heat here, though, because he had to know coming in this year that this guy was probably not going to sign the average bridge deal. He had to know that.
Yeah. I would think that, and that. I just think that they didn't know how hard they would go, And the issue with Anaheim, though, of course, is if you give Lindholm a big contract, you still have other young defensemen who are close to him, perhaps, and we don't know that you still have to sign, right? So that's
this reminds me of like just how the old guard always operated. Like everybody would just say, "Hey, when Glenn Sader was in charge of the Rangers, everybody just sort of swallowed that bridge deal, and that was it. There was no other option. They knew there was no chance you would get signed otherwise, and that did work for the Rangers for a while. But now we're in a different era, and now the younger player is more important than ever." Yeah. Back then, the younger player wasn't as important, and so.
And the fact is, Zach, they just locked up Vatanen for I think 5 years, so they got 4 more years after this year with him. They still have Fowler for another year.
Yeah.
And Manson and Theodore are signed through 2018, and they're on their entry level deals. And frankly, they haven't done enough in the NHL to really demand a ridiculous
that's true. That's true.
So Lindholm, with 3 years under his belt, he's the one who deserves to get that long-term deal for the big-time money. But the thing is that every big RFA defenseman, with the exception of Trouba, who's still holding out, they got the long-term deal. They got the 6 years. So they don't want to pay him the 6 years, and they don't want to buy a couple years of unrestricted free agency. Then the only option might be to trade him.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a fascinating turn, and it really are in this game of chicken with Winnipeg and Trouba and Lindholm and Anaheim, and we really could see it. we think, it's got to, we know with Trouba, I think Rushy hit it on the head last week that, basically Trouba's going to probably go to around December 1st. I mean, that's the deadline. So, but I think, that's, this is going to play out. It's going to play out very soon. Very soon.
I think Trouba will play out harder than Lindholm.
Yeah.
I think there's a better chance the Lindholm signing happens, but we'll see.
Well, Trouba has two things going for it, right? Which is that the Jets legitimately do want to get a left-handed shooting defenseman in there, and Trouba doesn't want to be in Winnipeg. So you've got both sides actually being better with the trade. And this Anaheim does want to keep Lindholm.
Right.
And I think Lindholm wants to stay in Anaheim. So I think that when it all is said and done, you've got a totally different situation there, unless these negotiations have hit a really weird spot, which happens. Then we don't know that now. But if this happens. And that's what these rumors, that's why I say the rumors in about 10% of the cases or 15% of the cases, that's what happens. But in the other 85%, 90%, it's more about scare tactics. It's more about let's get them moving,
I think we're relatively safe in saying that the lowest odds in this situation are them signing Lindholm and keeping Fowler. If they sign Lindholm, they're trading Fowler.
Yeah.
If they keep Fowler,
but that's changing all the time because Fowler has really impressed them, and this is that is.
Well, Dupre's out. Dupre being out now really does open it up where they could swallow this little bit of extra money because they're saving on that.
No, they could, and they could keep both of them, and they could, and that's the other right.
On the cap, yes, because they're way under the cap. But we've been saying that Anaheim is a budget team, and
but they can make a deal at the deadline, and it gives them a lot more time.
Okay.
Yeah, and insurance kicks in on long-term injury reserve stuff, so they don't have to pay that money. So there's different things there too. So that I think is it. So let's get to the Heritage Classic for a second because Rush, you have a really good story on it on Sportsology. Everybody should check it out for sure. But I want to show this. This I saw really. I don't know if you guys saw the alumni game, which was really.
I only saw bits and pieces. I didn't see the whole thing.
It's funny because I saw the introduction of the players, and I happened to be at Ricoh Coliseum for a Toronto Marlies hockey game, and I was sitting next to a scout who's a former NHLer. I won't say his name. And it's funny because we're watching all the Edmonton Oilers come out, and he says, "I played with that guy. I played with that guy." It was half the team he had played with that guy.
Wow.
Which was bizarre, and
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, this was like a I've been watching this show from Canada called my wife and I is really into this show. It's a Canadian show called Being Erica. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. I first saw it when I was up in Toronto covering the World Cup of Hockey, and I just turned on CBC late at night and they're playing it in reruns. It was out like it's been off the air for like 3 or 4 years, but there's like 5 seasons of it, and it's a time travel show. It's really good, really, really good. It's on Hulu, so if you have Hulu, you can watch it. I mean, it's unbelievably well done. It's a Canadian show, so I'm into it. So when I'm watching this show, where often she is time traveling back to the concept of the show is she has a list of regrets, and those lists of regrets she's seeing this therapist and the therapist can send her back in time to fix those regrets. So what happens is, so as I'm watching this game, after just watching like a whole bunch of Being Erica's with my wife as we were binge watching it, I kept thinking to myself that I am like transported back to high school. Like this really is like my high school, this game. Like this is how I remember, going when I was in high school. Like the Oilers were, I graduated in '86. So this Oilers team and this Ducks team was when the most of these guys were at their height, right? So this was a blast to watch. I thought it was really fun. I mean, and the one moment
I felt bad for Wayne Gretzky though, in the sense that, and even my wife mocked me. She goes, "Really, you feel bad for Wayne Gretzky?" I'm like, "No, it's not what you think. It's just that he played in this game, and I didn't see the game. So, but apparently he didn't like the way he played. So he said he stunk, and that he literally might never play again. And so that's the bad part about being Wayne Gretzky is you never want to even look mortal, even when you get older. And that's a tough thing to sort of live up to every day."
I think a lot of Wayne, is that. I mean, Wayne, it is a bit of a, I don't know, like a weird shock to the system.
He has a high standard, and I don't blame him. It's like, he is a legendary hockey player, and you never want to go out there and not be legendary. And again, I only saw the introductions and just saw the comments on Twitter about Teemu Selanne scoring a goal and about how the fans were reacting to certain things, and it's sort of suspension of disbelief when you watch it with an alumni game. And obviously, these guys have not been playing, and some of them may be still skating. Some of them may have put on a pair of skates in 20 years, and look like they had.
And they would still tear us apart if we played. You realize that, right?
Please, okay. I'll just give you this quick analogy. A friend of mine, the former Sabre Richard Martin, who is unfortunately deceased, years and years ago, this is maybe when Martin was in his late 40s, was playing at a recreational rink in suburban Buffalo, and my friend was practicing skating around, and Martin came on the ice. He basically had one knee. He was blowing by everybody.
Oh yeah,
going through everybody. He was, just for 5 minutes. He says, "I'm going to play like that," and he showed everybody what he could do. Yeah, even the goons in this league could.
Even in their 50s and 60s and 70s, it's crazy. I mean, it really is. So there was a moment though where Gretzky looked great, and this was a kind of I have it on video here. So this was a no look pass to Paul Coffey from behind the net. Coffey botched it really more than anything else. I mean, Gretzky, I didn't think looked terrible at all. I really think that it's being very hard on him. He was being very hard on himself for saying that. But let me show you this. So here we go. So this is all right. So the pass is right there. So you'll see it rewind. It'll stream through again. But okay, so this comes along the boards here, and this is just a little hit goes on there. Tikkanen gets taken out by I think Steen, and then this is behind the net here is Gretzky, and you'll see it right here. So he just turns, and that's just gonna look past to Paul Coffey right there in the slot. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. That's a lot of fun, and for what it's worth, this to me is the kind of.
How many people wish they could have taken out Esa Tikkanen back in his playing days?
Oh, I know, but this whole play with Housley chasing Gretzky in the corner, that's pretty cool, and Paul Coffey just of course botched it. But anyway, that there were good moments in this game. It really wasn't. It is what an alumni game is, and it really depends.
It just shows what goes on in his head. That's all.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, and the fact that Coffey and the whole thing about it is Coffey knows this when Gretzky got the puck behind the net, he's going to drift into the slot. There's little things there that you saw that are just that come back from this years ago, and that to me was the fun part of it.
Well, I definitely think that Edmonton had a goaltending advantage with Cujo and Bill Ranford facing Bob Asenza and Daniel Berthiaume.
Yeah, I know. Again, all high school.
When you needed them.
I know, it's so funny, but I did in general though. I thought that this, if I could have gone to, I was upset that I didn't go to this. And I should have gone to this one because this was just watching it. This looks beautiful. It's Winnipeg. It looked amazing.
They did a nice job. I mean, the guy who I sent, Jonathan West, really raved about it. He wrote about that game and yesterday's game. Winnipeg did a great job, but I will tell you, watching the Jets in the actual game, there are some issues. The issue of the Patrick Laine sort of like the bad pass, really not paying full attention. The bungle by Bufflin, and even on the power play, they just were relying on Bufflin just to sort of shoot. And it's like there wasn't enough movement. Like to me, these are a little bit of. I mean, it's a one-off game, so you can't get crazy because the conditions are different. But this is a bit of a problem for the Jets. And I don't even think the Oilers look great. I just think once they got momentum, they just never gave it up. I think Cam Talbot had a really good game. I do think that.
Yeah, Cam Talbot's been pretty good so far this year.
And we had to factor in that there was a 2-hour delay for the brightness. And Russ,
there's always a delay. I mean,
but this was a significant delay. It's the first one that there was a significant delay since that. I
don't understand how they don't figure this out ahead of time. Is that what you're gonna say, Mike?
No, it was the first one that had a significant delay since that Pittsburgh-Washington one.
Right.
The Steckel-Crosby game when I think it rained in the afternoon. But they could have figured it out. Were they expecting there to be clouds? I mean, they know,
that's the thing.
The sun is coming out.
Well, I guess it's the gamble. It's going to be friggin' cold as hell if we let this go into the nighttime. So we'll take the chance that maybe it'll be cloudy. This
is the first time that Winnipeg has had sun show up since 1972.
Right.
When sun showed up, they were just a little surprised.
There was a big party in this downtown. Yeah, no one knew what to do.
But it's really funny because every one of these games gets delayed, the ones that don't start at night. And it's really funny because people always fight me online. Oh, it's going to start on time. Oh, it's going to – and I'm always like, no, it won't. It might start 5 minutes late. It might start half an hour late. This time, couple hours late. But my point is, it's always late. But they have to do that. Like, they can't have the sun be in the guy's eyes.
Yeah, no, you have to do it. I mean, the point is, though, you could definitely test this ahead. You got the ice is on there for like a week, you know.
It's hard to, though, because even in Chicago, the sun was blazing at Wrigley Field a couple of times during practice, if you remember, Eck.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And at game time, the sun was never even a factor.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't, you know, the sun does the same thing every day, though, Russ. It does. The sun is the sun. The sun is one of the more consistent aspects of this. You can definitely tell where it's going to be. You can judge it. It does change its position, but it does so in a very predictable way. So, I don't know. I mean, the clouds, you don't know but I think that there's a way that they could say that there's a good chance if it's sunny, we're not. And I bet they say that. I don't know this for fact, but there's a good chance that they say, okay, if it's going to be sunny, we're going to start now. If it's not sunny, we'll start on time.
Right.
And they know
I'm sure they say it in the locker rooms. I'm sure the players
and they have it ahead of time because they have to tell, because the television, you know, they have to deal with the television. The television has to know that this is possible. And it's not a big deal when it's on the NHL Network, but it's another thing when it's on, you know, NBC.
Well, you know that they weren't going to play this game later in the year, especially in Winnipeg or Edmonton.
Yeah.
That first Heritage Classic, the Montreal Edmonton, I remember them talking about the ice like cracking in segments.
It was too brittle, yeah.
Well, Russ was there for that one, right?
I was there, yeah.
Yeah.
It was too brittle. It was.
And wasn't there an agreement between the two teams, like we're not going to hit each other?
No, there was no such agreement.
Okay, no. I had heard that, but
no, there were some hits, and so no, there was definitely no agreement.
I know you may have to take off, Russ. So
no, I got about 10 minutes. I'm
okay.
good.
Well, that's all we need here. So that's all. So all right. So we have some quick news here. Crosby is on the ice today, skating at practice, without his non-contact jersey on. Mm-hmm. So that's a big deal. This shows good. This shows maybe he's getting close. I'm sure he's getting close. And the way this usually works is that, you know, he might skate for another week like that before he gets back into a game situation. Right. So don't expect him to come back tonight. But the idea is he's heading in the right direction, and didn't, you know, may not have to miss very much time, which is a wonderful news for everybody involved. The next thing we have is, can you name the thing that's similar to this season from last season?
Other than they play hockey, no.
We have right now the same only team in the NHL to be not beaten in regulation, and that would be the Montreal Canadiens. So the Canadiens are, you know, they're the last undefeated team in regulation for the second season in a row, and that's pretty interesting. Montreal, you know, getting off to their best start in their history last year before collapsing completely. This year,
yeah, but it's interesting and alarming at the same time. It's basically proved everybody's point.
Well, no, most of this was done without Price, though. Price was only there for what, 2 games?
It doesn't matter, but they knew he was going to be there. Like, if they knew Carey Price could not play and couldn't play for 2 months, they wouldn't have done as well. To me, it just smacks of Carey Price really is the big ingredient on that team. Has nothing to do with coaching. Has nothing to do with anything else, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that they're playing better around in general.
That's fair. I mean, there's always going to be that, but they knew that Carey Price just had the flu and it wasn't even like any kind of injury, so the team mentally wasn't missing him. If
right.
Carey Price had been missed like he was last year, they would still have similar problems to last year. They just might not be as bad, but they still would be bad.
Right. Someone pointed this out to me, which I thought was really interesting, that you know, Nick Foligno and Marcus Foligno are two brother players who are both you know, both
one with Columbus, one with Buffalo.
Right, exactly. Both born in the United States. One plays for Team Canada, one plays for Team USA.
Correct.
Which I did not realize. I mean, it's just an interesting fact. You guys probably realized it, obviously, a long time ago, but I did not. So I thought that was.
They're dual citizens.
They're both dual citizens. Just one's chosen to play for Canada, one's chosen to play for US, which is kind of.
I think it was the fact that because Nick played for Team USA and then Marcus played for Canada in the World Juniors that was in Buffalo. And it was more a question of opportunity. Like, I don't know if Nick Foligno would have had a chance to play in the World Juniors for Canada, whereas Marcus made that World Junior team. So I think that's what it was. Christmas.
I think that's accurate.
That's interesting.
There's a little bit of news here. Strange. The Maple Leafs have placed Milan Michalek on waivers. Michalek was making, I believe, over $4 million. So he would be a rather hefty salary to go down, and have claimed Ben Smith, who they had last year, off of waivers from Colorado. They're now at 49, or excuse me, at 50 contracts with the claiming of Smith, and there might be a resolution coming with the Jared Cowan situation that's been out there since June. I would think that the Leafs probably know what's going to happen with that instead of using up their last pro contract spot on Ben Smith. Just a guess.
That is interesting. I mean, it could also be setting up for something.
And there could also
it
be.
Really sounds like to me. It sort of sounds like that's a weird move in some ways.
There could also be a trade. Now the thing is, they may think that Michalek will not get claimed with a salary of over $4 million in his history of injury problems. They've already sent Brooks Lake down to the AHL. He's making $4.5 million, and he got through. So you're right. It might be setting up something where they're going to make a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-2 type of deal, and they'll be able to clear the roster situation.
Can we talk about the fact that I think it's completely wrong to send Brooks Lake down there? I just feel as if
I don't think he's going to be down there for long, Eck. I think this was basically they were in a waiver situation right now,
right.
And he didn't play the first weekend for the Marlies, and he played, I think, 2 games this weekend. I didn't see whether he played in Sunday's game, but he did play in Friday and Saturday. I think it's more likely that just get a few games in, and when we straighten out our situation, you'll get called up, because there are players playing right now who could get down to the Marlies without having to clear waivers, and I think that's what's.
But none of these things affect their defense, which is really what needs fixing.
Right.
No, that's for sure.
This is